If you've listened to previous episodes of this podcast, you know that one recurring theme from the road trip my brother and I took last summer was calming the nerves of certain friends and family members who were worried for our safety. They were concerned specifically about our route through countries like Iran and Turkey, where there had just been an attempted coup. Now, we had researched everything pretty thoroughly, so after making a few adjustments to our itinerary, we felt confident everything would be okay. But even so, we were still a little nervous, because we weren't entirely sure what to expect. Our friends Rosie and Jane, who were traveling with us, were much more relaxed, though. The night before we were due to cross into Turkey, I was walking around the streets of Plovdiv, Bulgaria, when I had a conversation with Jane that made me see things from a different perspective. To give some context, Jane lives in the UK, but her daughter Emmy lives in the southwestern US, where she just graduated from college. We got to talking about one of the key distinctions between Britain and America.
It's such a different culture. You know, everybody owns guns. We don't own guns in England. You know, if people fall out and they have a fight, they use their hands. Yeah. It's too easy for somebody to pull a gun. I mean, on the campus Emmy was, and there was a shooting. And that was just a guy that had an argument. Guy walked to his car, took his gun out, killed someone.
In Arizona?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's too easy. You know, we all know in the heat of the moment, if you're angry, how things can escalate so quickly.
So why am I bringing this up? Well, however you feel about gun control, if you're an American listening to this, I'd venture to guess that despite the occasional shootings that take place, you probably figure it's a big country, and things in the US are generally pretty safe. But to someone like Jane, who lives in a nation without all the guns, America can seem like a scary place. She said she's even had conversations with her daughter about how to stay safe.
If you get pulled up by the police, you're polite. English humour is quite dry. As you will know, Americans don't quite understand it sometimes. And it's very easy to, say the wrong thing.
Our conversation made me realize that the risks or potential dangers of a particular situation can seem wildly different depending upon the lens you use to look at the world, and they often have more to do with perception than reality.
Going through Turkey, I think we've got to be sensible, but in the main, the Turkish people are nice people. I would be much more concerned about. I am more concerned about my daughter being in the States than anywhere in Europe I can think of, to be honest.
I'm Scott Gurian. I'm a longtime public radio and print reporter, and I've always loved traveling and experiencing different cultures, so I've created this podcast called Far From Home to document my adventures. To start off, I'm telling the story of this massive journey my brother and I took with our friends, raising money for charity. We drove nearly 11,000 miles.
11,000?
That's right, a quarter of the way around the Earth, from London to Mongolia, through 18 countries, 8 time zones, 5 mountain ranges, and a few deserts, in a ridiculously tiny car.
It's like the Beverly Hillbillies.
It's not for the faint of heart.
It's the adventure, isn't it? It's just the thing of pushing yourself to the absolute limit, because I think it's going to take us out of our comfort zone, but in a really good way.
If you're just joining me, I suggest you first go back and listen to all the previous episodes in order to get up to speed and for all of this to make a bit more sense. From language barriers to car trouble, getting horribly lost to paying bribes to shady traffic cops, it's been quite an amazing experience, and over the coming episodes, I'll be bringing all of you along with me for the ride. On this episode, we finally get to Turkey, and we're a bit surprised by what we see. Let me start off by bringing you up to speed. It was a Saturday, and we'd gotten a pretty late start after spending all morning at the mechanic getting our radiator overflow tank resealed. We thought they fixed the problem, but then we noticed a few hours later that we were still losing water, so we had this car issue that had yet to be properly diagnosed. Now, it was late in the afternoon, and we were sitting in a long line of cars waiting to exit Bulgaria. We figured having both a man and a woman in each vehicle, who folks might mistake for a mother and a son, might speed our passage through the checkpoints, so my brother went in Jane's car while Rosie rode with me. After an hour or so in line, I looked at my watch and realized it was already 5 o'clock. It was nearly 100 degrees out, things were moving very slowly, and patience was in short supply.
We got some road rage here between two Belgians.
Look at this. Look at it. Just muscling his way into the line.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, look, mate, I don't care if I hit you because I'm in a shit car.
We finally made it to the front of the line, thankfully without hitting anyone along the way, and we got our passports stamped out of the country. Now we were in no man's land. I went inside a giant duty-free shopping mall there, where I changed money and purchased Turkish car insurance. Jane declined coverage for her car, since her insurance company told her she would be covered all the way to Iran. Back outside, Rosie asked her if she was sure.
100% about that, or just 80?
No, we should be. I know we should be.
But are you? She assured us not to worry, so we continued on our way, back in another long line through several more booths where we handed over our documents again and filled out all sorts of forms. I was wearing a red and white Turkey baseball cap I'd picked up at a gas station to help charm the border guards, but I don't think it made a difference. It took us 2 more hours before we finally exited on the other side. Okay, so we are in Turkey, and there's a giant mosque right here, a big mosque with these big white minarets. There was also a street vendor selling simit, which is sort of a cross between a bagel and a pretzel that you see everywhere in Turkey. I bought one to share with Rosie. Although Jane and my brother had started out behind us, they had somehow gotten separated along the way, and it took them well over an hour to catch up. When they finally did, I asked them about the delay. So what happened now?
We were inside. They gave us lemonade.
Wait, why'd you go inside? What happened?
Jane?
Insurance.
Your insurance wasn't good. Oh.
And I phoned them up. I said, we're at the Turkish border. We need the green card. You need to email it through. Gave the email address. The email came through to says it covers us for EU countries.
She apparently didn't know Turkey wasn't in the EU.
Well, there you go. And then, just as we got to the counter, system went down.
Yeah, the computer system.
So we had to wait probably at least half an hour for the system to come back up.
Our delays at the border put us even more behind schedule than we already were. You see, it was now around 7 in the evening, and we still had a 6.5-hour drive ahead of us. Not only was our hotel already booked, but we had an equally long drive the following day, so we had no choice but to push onward. After grabbing a quick bite to eat, we hit the road again. A few hours into our trip, my brother and I were starting to get a bit tired, but we were also really excited about our journey. So it's a little bit after 11 in the evening. Over the past week, we've crossed all of Europe. Finally, we're in Istanbul now, and we're right now crossing from Europe into Asia. And this is pretty exciting. The bridge is lit up with, I guess they're LED lights. They keep changing colors. These are Turkish colors, red and white, going back and forth. And this is beautiful. Wow, look at the river, the city on both sides. What is that, like some kind of big
It's the old side of the city and the newer side.
Oh, this is the old side? Okay, on the European side, that's the old part of the city. And then the newer side on the Asian side, is that what it is, Drew?
I guess,
I'm not sure. Anyway, I can't say I've ever made a land crossing from one continent to another, so this is really exciting. So this is the continent we're going to be in for the next however many thousand miles. As I mentioned in previous episodes, we really wanted to stop to see Istanbul, but after the recent political turmoil, we decided to keep going out of an abundance of caution. So now we were heading several more hours away to the smaller city of Bolu. To make sure we were safe, we had hoped to avoid driving after dark, but it was getting pretty late in the evening by this point, so you could see how that worked out for us. Actually, though, things turned out just fine. Let me tell you a bit about what it was like driving that first night in Turkey, so you could understand how it was not at all like we expected. To start off, I was struck with how clean, modern, and advanced everything looked. The roads were excellent, and I don't just mean better than Romania and Bulgaria, but even better in some places than our highways back home. The rest stops put our rest stops in the US to shame. Each was like a small village with several restaurants, valet car washes, a bouncy castle for the kids, and shops selling gifts, children's toys, and boxes of candied Turkish sweets. It had been less than a week since the attempted coup, but you'd almost never know it. On the outskirts of Istanbul, we saw tons of people going about their daily lives, driving home from shopping malls and movie theaters, and stopping to fill their tanks with gas. At one point, we got caught in some traffic, and drivers around us who saw that we were foreigners started waving and giving us the thumbs up. We did see a lot of Turkish flags on vehicles and in apartment building windows, which we interpreted as a show of patriotism by supporters of the government, but there was no visible police presence and no military checkpoints. For the most part, it was hard to tell anything was awry. So, after all the anticipation and hand-wringing we'd done over the past few weeks about traveling through Turkey, our experience seemed pretty anticlimactic, but in a good way. We finally got to our hotel around 2 in the morning and got a good night's sleep. Then we spent another full day on the road before getting to our next destination in central Turkey.
Whoa, look at that ahead of us.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going.
So we've just arrived near Cappadocia. There's this huge, hunk of rock ahead of us with little caves carved out of it. This is the coolest thing.
We got out of our cars to take a closer look.
This is exciting, isn't it?
Look at this!
I know. This is awesome.
Cappadocia is known for its natural stone pillars and buildings hollowed out of ancient volcanic hills. The landscape almost makes you feel like you're on another planet, and it was unlike anything any of us had ever seen before. When we first made plans to drive through Turkey, we knew this would be worth a detour, and now that we were here, it didn't disappoint. We were especially impressed with our hotel, which was really amazing. There weren't many other guests there, so the manager showed us around and let us pick any rooms we wanted.
Watch your hand.
Watch your head, yeah.
Watch your head.
Okay, we're going down this circular staircase carved all out of rocks. I feel like I'm in the Flintstones here. You okay?
Oh, I'm just in disbelief.
Here, television room, one bed here, second bed here.
Oh, Jane, this might be our room.
I think this is
Gorgeous.
Oh, in heaven.
Oh my goodness.
The walls and ceilings were all made of rock, but lest you think this was some sort of dingy cave, the hardwood floors and antique furnishings kind of made it feel like a castle. After considering our options, my brother and I eventually settled on an enormous suite with several levels of balconies overlooking a scenic valley. In the coming weeks of our trip, there would be many rough days and uncomfortable nights, but for now, we were living in luxury. We settled in for the night as a haunting but beautiful evening call to prayer from a nearby mosque echoed through the streets of the town. Cappadocia seemed like an awesome place, and we were really hoping to explore, but we did still have our lingering car problem that we needed to fix, so the next morning we headed out to another mechanic, and no sooner had we pulled up that...
Oh, whoa.
Shit.
Oh! We just parked the car and there's tons of water leaking out of the bottom. We never saw it doing that. That's the worst we've seen it.
Seriously, it was like a waterfall, and it left a big puddle on the floor of the garage.
What's the luck of that happening right now?
Of all the water coming out, yeah. It's always like you call the repairman and then things are fine by the time he comes.
Not that I wanted that to happen.
No, but it's good so they could see the issue.
We found someone who spoke some English to help us communicate, and then we explained the issues we've been having.
Bringing in more experts here. It's like everyone from the car place is coming to look at this as a case study.
Half a dozen guys stood around staring intently under the hood. After some discussion, our translator told us they agreed with the assessment of the mechanic we'd seen in Bulgaria.
They also think that the problem is with the tank. He says it's only about the tank.
So you don't think nothing bad like head
Yeah,
gasket
yeah,
around?
He's understand. He's professional. Not your job, not his job.
Of course.
You know, he's saying it's not mechanic. It's
Not a mechanical issue, just with the tank.
That's good.
it's good news.
They still couldn't find exactly where the leak was, though, and it was unclear why the previous patch of our radiator overflow tank hadn't fixed the problem. These guys decided that the best approach was to give us a whole new tank, and while they didn't have exactly the same one to replace it, they did find a tank that seemed like it could be a good substitute. So they secured it in an empty spot behind our battery using some tire inner tube, and they connected the hose.
So, do we just fill this to the top or not to the top?
No, it's half.
Worst case scenario, if it does go down and it keeps going down, what else could the problem be?
I think it's no problem.
We weren't so sure, but not knowing much about cars ourselves, we had no choice but to trust his expertise and move on, hopeful that our car problems were finally behind us. We drove back to our hotel to meet with Rosie and Jane. We were starving after spending all morning at the mechanic, so the four of us ventured out to get some lunch. We had arrived at Cappadocia in the evening, so it was no surprise the streets were empty then, but it did seem unusual how few tourists we saw now during the day, even though it was the off-season.
I know that they said that this is usually the quiet time of the year.
I think it's super
but
quiet.
Super quiet now. People have been scared away.
It's such a shame. They don't need to be.
Yeah, I mean, everyone I've spoken to before we came here, they said this part of Turkey is supposed to be very safe.
It was a beautiful day, so we found an outdoor restaurant that someone had recommended. As we sat down, a woman from a nearby table heard us talking English, and she came over to introduce herself.
So, I'm Rosie.
Hey.
Rosie, nice to meet you.
Hey, I'm Scott.
Scott.
And Drew.
Jane.
Jane.
Rosie, Scott, Drew,
And
Jane.
you are?
Nestle.
Nestle, like the chocolate.
Nestle was on her lunch break from her job at a nearby hotel. She told us this restaurant called Gardinelli, or Women's Hand, was one of her favorites since it was staffed entirely by women from the local village cooking their traditional recipes. She joined us at our table and offered to help us order.
The only thing is we don't eat meat.
Actually, I will eat something and I'm vegetarian too.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I can offer you the leaf dolma.
Grape leaves.
Grape leaf
Yes.
dolma.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the other one is kırca. What's kırca? It's some kind of ravioli and butter. And another dolma, it's pumpkin flour. It's some kind of orange color and really small pieces.
Zucchini flour, like,
zucchini
okay.
flour,
Yes,
yes.
yes. And they're just filled with rice?
Onion, tomatoes, olive oil, and
Wow.
fried.
There were also potato-filled dumplings and sour cherry juice to wash it down. It all sounded so delicious that we asked them to make us a little bit of everything. While we waited for the food to arrive, we asked Nestle about how the town seemed so quiet.
We're really surprised at how few people there are here, staying here. We know it's the low season anyway, but because of all of the troubles that there have been in Turkey, we understand that there's just no tourism, and it must be terrible for people in hotels.
Yes, exactly. Actually, for the big hotels, maybe it's not problem, but this kind of places, small places, really big trouble. But who knows? We are really so full of hope. We are not desperate, so don't be sad for us. Everything will be all right.
Tourism used to be Cappadocia's lifeblood, she said, but after a bombing in central Ankara, a terrorist attack at the Istanbul airport, and the recent coup attempt, the flow of visitors had all but dried up. The food arrived, and it was even more delicious than it sounded. It was clear it was made with a lot of hard work and love. Take the stuffed zucchini flowers, for instance.
They collect these flowers between 6 and 7 a.m. They have to be opened. Flowers, and they pick them up in a 1 hour. They have to
Stuff
fill
them.
inside. Yes.
Oh wow! And then they cook them later.
Yes, later.
They look wonderful.
Wow! Oh my goodness!
This is like the kind of real authentic Turkish food that you don't see at Turkish restaurants back home. You see dolmas, but these are much better than the dolmas we get back home.
I'd traveled through about a dozen more countries on my trip and eat countless more meals, but looking back months later, I still think this is probably the best food I had on my entire journey. It was great to hear the backstory of how our lunch was created, but as we continued chatting with Nestle, our conversation inevitably returned to the problems facing Turkey.
So right now, are many of the hotels, are they just like totally empty or close to empty? Yeah.
We can say.
Yeah. And the small hotels, like you said, are the ones that are really struggling.
And most of them also, the people are without job anymore.
They had to
Yes.
fire them. So like people who are cooks in the restaurant and people like yourself, they're losing their jobs because the tourists aren't coming.
Put more yogurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
wow.
not for our hotel.
Thankfully for your hotel so far, it's okay.
She nodded silently. Not long ago, Turkey attracted over 40 million foreigners a year, making it the 6th most popular tourist destination in the world, just behind Italy. But now many are staying away, and it's easy to see why. After a suicide bomber killed 11 people at an Istanbul bus station last June, a Kurdish terrorist group released a statement that it plans to specifically target Turkey's tourist industry to inflict economic harm on the country. Add in a bunch of ISIS attacks and some political instability, and the situation looks bleak for people whose living is dependent upon a steady flow of visitors. People like Ahmed, who works in a local pottery shop.
Has it been really slow here recently?
Yeah, this year just the Turkish peoples, that's why very slow, like 90% less.
So it's just local Turkish people who are visiting?
Yeah, just the local Turkish people.
I heard that a lot of people were losing their jobs who worked in the tourism industry.
Yes.
Yeah.
More than 15,000 people.
More than 15,000 people lost their jobs?
Yeah. More than 2,000 hotel is
closed. Wow.
Yes.
Oh no, that's really bad. Oh my gosh.
The outlook was also worrying to Abdullah Gunay, who for the past 7 years has been the owner of Kale Konak, the hotel where we were staying. We spoke as he gave me a tour and told me a bit about the history of the place.
There were 3 houses here. We bought the houses from the owners.
Mm-hmm.
The stone-made building was like 130 years old. And we have cave rooms under the house, which is where people start living in 2000 BC.
Wow.
For a long time, people lived here in the caves because it's easy to dig. The cave rooms has got always the same temperature. It's warm in the winter, and in the summer you don't need any air conditioning because it's cool. And what we know, the Christians, they were running away from the Romans, and that's why there are some underground cities in the area.
Mm-hmm.
Like 4,000 or 5,000 people can go in and stay months. They were living underground.
Mm-hmm.
So we convert those 3 houses. We have 17 rooms, a Turkish bath in the hotel. All the rooms are different than each other.
So you get a lot of tourists normally in a normal year coming here from all over the world?
Let me tell you, last year mostly from United States, Canada, South America, Australia, and in July and August from Europe. But this year, because of some political reasons, we don't have that much client. I understand them very well, why they are not coming. Turkey is very close to the Middle East. We are always close to the problems. But Cappadocia is very quiet. We never had problem here for years. It's very safe.
So it's usually slow around this time of year, but this year even more than usual.
Not this slow, never.
Yeah. Are we actually the only ones staying here now?
Yesterday, yes. But today we have some more guests.
Okay.
Hopefully, if they arrive.
Yeah. Have people had reservations, then they're canceling them?
Yeah. Mostly we get reservations a year ahead. So the people who reserved in last winter to come in the summer, they start canceling. They don't feel secure here in this time. I already lost 70% of my business if I compare it to the last years. And it's hard to recover the expenses. There are like 400 hotels like me in Cappadocia, 400 hotels. So I hope for next year we will get better business. Hopefully it will get better soon. Otherwise we have to do something. We will see.
Last summer was the worst tourist season Turkey experienced in 25 years, so Abdullah was incredibly grateful for our business, and he thanked us for being brave enough to come to his country. But in all honesty, there was never a moment when we felt unsafe or in any kind of danger. While things seemed calm on our end, however, it was a different story back home. On our second day in Turkey, I got a news alert on my phone that 2 people had been killed and 17 injured at a shooting in Fort Myers, Florida. And this was just a month after 49 folks were shot to death in an Orlando nightclub. Our father, who lives near Tampa, had been worried about us in Turkey ever since we left, but now my brother and I figured it was our turn. "We're concerned about you in Florida," we texted him half-jokingly. "We think you should move somewhere else." Visit my website at farfromhomepodcast.org to see photos from our visit to Cappadocia, which is such an amazing place. While you're there, you could also sign up for my newsletter to get notified when new shows are released, or follow me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. On the next episode, we cross into Iran and are blown away by Persian curiosity and hospitality.
Most of the people in Iran like to have a good relationship with your country.
Of course.
I think it's not the problem of the people, the problem of the government.
Of
yes,
course,
same as your government. Yes,
absolutely.
Thanks as always to my friends at the Public Radio Exchange for their behind-the-scenes technical help. You can check them out at prx.org. Thanks for listening.